morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish with you here as we get to the very latest in sports wagering, sports business. Big story here about a potential sale of a Major League Baseball team we're going to do right off the top. Stay tuned to that. That is coming right up. Also, Jacob Camenker from Sporting News is with us, in addition to Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report. And how were the ratings last week in the AFC and the NFC Championship? Our resident expert, Simon Applebaum, comes to us here on the show in about 45 minutes from now. Our 1 hour show every day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of NewsWire. And if you had $1.7 billion to spend, you could have thrown it over at the Baltimore Orioles and potentially purchased them. What happened? Where was your $1.7 billion? You didn't get it done. Well, guess who did? David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group and Mike Arghetti of the Aris Management Corporation. These are two private investors coming up with the $1.725 billion price tag. John Oran broke the story yesterday of Puck News. Good job by him, by the way. Kind of came out of nowhere. As the Orioles family, John Angelos and company, appear to be moving away from their ownership there. The building of Camden Yards, all the success that they had 10, 15 years ago, all the playoff appearances. Cal Ripken running around the field, 21-30 run. This is all part of this ownership group previously, and it looks like this is the end of the line. Now, how this affects the Orioles in the future really remains to be seen, because when you spend this kind of money, I would assume that you spend that kind of money on the field too. But that's not really been the Orioles' way. General manager Mike Elias has been building a juggernaut of minor league talent and winning games, and will that continue or not? Well, just remains to be seen. And by the way, this has to go through the owners in terms of voting too. So not yet official. This is just the report. $1.25 billion Baltimore Orioles potentially being sold. Okay, now over to the National Football League as we await the Super Bowl next week. We're going to be saying that a lot here this week on the show. How about the Pittsburgh Steelers? They have a new hire. They hire Arthur Smith. Does his name sound familiar? Former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. He's the new offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith had a lot of success in Tennessee, not a lot of success in Atlanta. We'll see how he does in Pittsburgh. The Buffalo Bills have promoted linebackers coach Bobby Babich to their defensive coordinator. Of course, Joe Brady was named the offensive coordinator. Now, when we got done with the show yesterday, I was poking around on social media and I saw this story that Ben Johnson has decided to stay with the Detroit Lions. He was a possibility for Washington and Carolina, maybe Seattle, even Atlanta. There's a lot of reports saying he was looking to break the bank in terms of being a head coach in the NFL, but loyalty to the Lions, going to run it back, going to stay with them for at least one more season, and then maybe enter the coaching cycle again. Also, Browns running back Kareem Hunt has received surgery for a ruptured adductor. He will be a free agent in March, and actually he was a free agent last year until Kareem Hunt got hurt, and then he was back with Cleveland again. All right, let's go over to some college news. The University of Tennessee right now under investigation for NIL violations. A ruling in the summer of 23 was charged with 18 level 1 violations, fined $8 million. This is around related activity to the collective, which is Tennessee's primary NIL collective. We'll see what ends up happening there. Florida State, boy, they're always in the news for leaving the ACC, other teams not wanting them to leave the ACC. FSU, by the way, has named former ACC Commissioner John Swofford in an amended complaint. Florida State has filed a complaint essentially saying that some of the millions of dollars had cost media rights, according to a published report with Raycom Sports. And so essentially with Florida State saying they're leaving, Raycom Sports has cost millions. For those of you who are familiar with Raycom watching Saturday morning college football, that's where the ACC has been broadcast. The Big 12 has released their 16-team 2024 schedule. BYU traveling to Utah in the Big 12. Okay, fair enough. Also in college basketball last night, did you catch this? The number 4 team in the country, the number 5 team in the country. Everyone's going down. And last night, it was the number 3 team in the country, North Carolina, and they end up losing last night to Georgia Tech, 74-73. South Carolina defeats Tennessee by a final of 63-59. This has been the craziest season for upsets in college basketball, no doubt. Okay, we got some NBA news as well. We'll get to some all-star fun, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. Steph Curry, Sabrina Ionescu are going to face off in a 3-point contest during All-Star Weekend. It is the first time that an NBA and a WNBA player are going head-to-head in this kind of competition, and Ionescu is a phenomenal shooter. So Steph is going to be up against it, I would say, in this competition. The NBA has informed teams of a projected salary cap for next year. It is $141 million, $1 million lower than it was 1 year ago. Shouldn't make a difference. How about the red-hot New York Knicks? They win 14 games in the month of January. It's the most since 1994. They moved up all the way in the Eastern Conference to third. And also LeBron James, right now, 273 points away from 40,000 career points. He's on pace to reach 40,000 in the next 11 games and become the NBA's all-time leading scorer. No question. LeBron has had a career. All right, now the PGA Tour announced this morning that they're finalizing a $3 billion private investment deal and still discussing a merger with Live Golf. So here are the details that the PGA Tour champions and Korn Ferry Tour members of the deal are receiving. $3 billion investment, a $12 billion valuation courtesy of Strategic Sports Group. The players get $900 million in equity to start. They'll be paid out to about 180 players, by the way. The higher players get ranked more money. And the PIF investment is subject to regulatory issues, which still could take a while. So more money coming in for the PGA Tour. Meanwhile, no official merger between the PGA Tour and Live Golf. And maybe that's the reason why Tyrrell Hatton decided to leave the PGA Tour. Yes, in case you missed it, this is happening. Tyrrell Hatton, the number 16 player in the world, is headed to play for Live Golf for this upcoming season, which is about to get underway. In Major League Baseball, it was announced on Tuesday that Corey Seager is going to miss most of spring training after receiving surgery. Of course, Seager, one of the heroes of the Texas Rangers run to the World Series last season, and a very disappointing ending to a story, if you have not followed, at a minor league stadium in Wichita, Kansas. A stolen Jackie Robinson statue, which was, who knows who was, why they don't have cameras around this stuff and they can't figure out, I have no idea. But people stole the statue, cut the legs off. I mean, it's terrible. Took the statue, they couldn't find it, and then yesterday morning at 8:40 a.m. Eastern, they ended up finding the statue in Wichita in a garbage burning. Cannot make this stuff up. Now, I know that they have started a fund to try and build a new Jackie Robinson statue in the stadium, but needless to say, this is not a story that I like doing here on NewsWire. I like talking some NFL. We're going to do that next. Jacob Camenker is coming up from Sporting News. We'll get his latest opinion on the Super Bowl odds, which have been very solid right now. San Francisco still a 1.5 favorite. Total still 47.5. But we're going to go over the possibilities to win the MVP of the big game next with Jacob Camenker. Don't go away.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction, or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the Rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit, going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back. Jacob Camenker is with us from Sporting News. We'll preview the Super Bowl and also talk about the coaching cycle going on right now in the National Football League. Jacob, welcome back. I know we have a little bit less than 2 weeks until the big game. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Glad to be here as always.
Yeah. So, Jacob, once upon a time, they stopped doing this 2 weeks off in between the Super Bowl. And it was 1 week, and then they played the game the next week. I think this probably happened like 2 years in a row, and then they went back to the 2 weeks again. What do you prefer?
I kind of like the 2 weeks of buildup, as weird as that sounds. It kind of gives you a chance to reset, kind of evaluate the matchup, think about it from every angle, and I think it builds some excitement. It also allows both teams to get healthy if they're not healthy, if you have guys that might be able to come back. Like for the Chiefs, Joe Tooney, we don't know if he's going to play or not, but he'll at least have a chance to come back with the 2 weeks off. So I think it's good from that perspective. But I do get that at a certain point, you're just like, you want the end of the season here. It's a little bit of a drawn out tension thing. So I understand why people might just want it to be the following week, and then we kind of move on to the future.
Yeah. No, listen, I guess I can see it both ways. The point you make about the injuries is definitely fair. We want both teams to be at full strength if possible. But the waiting is very, very difficult. Waiting 2 weeks for a game. Okay, but speaking of which, we've got the same odds as we've had now for about 48 hours. 49ers still 1.5 point favorites over the Chiefs, total 47.5. So line's kind of stuck. Maybe this moves one way or the other, but 49ers were 2.5 in some spots, went down to 2, now 1.5. Total was about 48, down to 47.5. This feels about right. You see any movement here between now and next Sunday?
I think you might get a point or a half point in either direction, depending on which teams are healthier, what the injury report says, how things are looking from a matchup standpoint. So I think at the end of the day, you might see the 49ers favored by 2 when this is all said and done. That's kind of what I think is going to end up happening. But I think you're right that this is just about right. I think you can't make either of these teams a 3-point favorite, because then the professional bettors are going to just smash the +3 with the other team. These teams are pretty evenly matched. I expect this to be a little bit of a low-scoring game because the Chiefs have such a good defense, and the 49ers, have the ability to get some stops and pressures on Mahomes too. So I'm liking the under in this one, and I think that number is looking pretty good to me, and I don't think that's going to move at any point soon. So that's my lean right now, is on the under.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, look, they both teams have had problems scoring in the first half of most games. Kansas City finally broke out a little bit in the first half of that game against the Baltimore Ravens. As it pertains to the Super Bowl MVP, this generally is a quarterback award. That's not to say that other players haven't won it. Once every few years, somebody has a big pick or wide receiver. We've seen it happen in the past. New England Deion Branch win it one year. But Mahomes and Purdy are just so overwhelming favorites over on FanDuel, plus 140, plus 200, that I don't know that it's much fun to even talk about, Jacob. So let's see if we can find anybody else, maybe a reason. Christian McCaffrey, plus 450. And then, my gosh, it's all the way down to Kelsey at 17-1, Deebo Samuel 33-1, Isaiah Pacheco 35-1. And look, I suppose McCaffrey is interesting because if he ended up with like 3 scores, we could have that talk. If Kelsey had the game that he had last week, then we could have that conversation with him. But then you would look at Mahomes and say, wait a second here, the guy throwing it to him deserves the award as well. It does feel like a quarterback usually wins. Can we make a case for anyone else?
I think you can make a very good case for Travis Kelce here for a few reasons. It's a lot of narrative stuff here. One of the things, no tight end has ever won Super Bowl MVP. So you know the NFL and its voters in a situation where if he has a big game, they love to have these first-time things. So you could see if Kelce gets 10 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown, you could certainly see him work his way into that, oh, look at this performance, especially if he has something along the lines of half of Mahomes' yardage total. Mahomes goes for like 225 and Kelce has over 100. I think we'll be talking about Kelce as a potential MVP candidate. Also, if Mahomes has 2 touchdowns and they're both to Kelce, I think that becomes a tiebreaker because you have maybe a little voter fatigue with going Mahomes if the Chiefs were to win the Super Bowl. So they might be looking to give it to someone else. So at 17-1 odds, I really like Travis Kelce there. I think he's a solid bet. And that's one where if you think the Chiefs are going to win this game, which they are currently my lean, I haven't locked that in by any means yet. But if you're going to go with the Chiefs, you could pair Kelce bet with the Mahomes bet and kind of hedge them yourselves and give yourself a really good chance of taking home a good payout if Travis Kelce wins. And if you think this is going to be a defensive slog like I do, you could also pick a defensive player if you want to get really, really bold. But a lot has to go in your favor for that to happen. So those are more of those like fun long shots like a Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed or Trent McDuffie if you go with the Chiefs.
Like Sneed would have to knock the ball out of somebody again at the end zone and have a pick to win the MVP. That's kind of the way that went. I've seen that before. I mean, I remember Larry Brown once upon a time for the Cowboys won the MVP. Got a big contract after that with the Raiders. Story for another day. So here's one that I'm stunned with. I would have had this completely wrong, Jacob. I thought it was a foregone conclusion that Ben Johnson was going to be a head coach in the NFL, more so than Bill Belichick off the season that the Lions had. I just thought this was a no-brainer for some team to take him on. And then as the cycle was going on, he wasn't getting these jobs, but I was like, nah, it's because he's still, coaching for the Lions. That ends. And he says, I'm going back. I'm not going to coach Washington. I'm not going to coach Seattle. There's some reports he wants some insane amount of money. Maybe that is the case too. Maybe that's factoring in. I don't think it should. I mean, he is the bona fide best offensive coordinator right now in the National Football League. And I really, all I could do is speculate, Jacob. Does he not like the spots that are open? Does he really love Detroit so much he doesn't want to leave? I got no clue how this went down. I was totally wrong. I thought he'd be a coach today.
I was stunned by this development. I really was. I thought for sure with Washington waiting to hire their coach, I thought it was just Ben Johnson's job there. They were just waiting for him to be out of the playoffs. But I think that, I don't know for sure, but it seems like he had chances last offseason too. I think he really wants to have one more crack at a potential Super Bowl run in Detroit. I think coming up short in the NFC Championship game, I wonder if that doesn't happen. If they make the Super Bowl, I wonder if he says, all right, I am going to go do another job. I am going to go to Washington after this. So I was stunned by that. Detroit has to be over the moon happy about this because Dan Campbell's going to bring back that whole offensive staff, or at least most of it in all likelihood. And they'll have a chance to continue to build continuity. Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs in their second seasons. It's going to be a really great offense next year. So if they continue to add to that defense, they're going to be a threat in the NFC again. I'm very excited to see what they do.
Yeah, when FanDuel has the odds after the Super Bowl to win next year's Super Bowl, there are not going to be more than 2 or 3 teams that are going to be ahead of the Lions going into next year. It's just impossible with the way that they played. They played great. What piqued your interest most with this hiring cycle? I mean, everyone's talking about Harbaugh naturally, but Brian Callahan, a little bit of an unknown. Same thing with Dave Canales. Seems like Atlanta interviewed everybody and landed on Raheem Morris. The Bill Belichick stuff is really interesting. The fact that it looks like he's not going to be a head coach anywhere too. Seattle and Washington still haven't decided on a guy either.
Yeah, I think what piques my interest most is Belichick not getting a job. Just it seems like he interviewed in Atlanta and didn't get that. And I understand that Raheem Morris is a great leader and he has a lot of potential and he has head coaching experience before, but going with him over Belichick is a curious decision to me. The hire I'm most excited about right now, the Panthers getting Dave Canales. I mean, he has done incredible work with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield in back-to-back years. Arguably two of the best bounce-back seasons in recent NFL history. So Bryce Young was terrible as a rookie, but now he has a quarterback guru with him. So I'm excited to see how that pans out.
All right. Well, Jacob, great stuff. As always, we'll talk next week. We'll get some official positions before the Super Bowl. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thanks. You too, Craig. Take care.
All right. We got Jim Gazzale coming up next from Legal Sports Report. He's going to dive into some potential news on sports betting in the state of Maryland and also a new sports betting operator joining the ranks in Indiana. We'll tell you who those are coming up next on NewsWire. That's correct.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you could talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire on SportsGrid. Jim Gazzale, fresh off a nice, relaxing vacation to my home state here of Florida, is all revved up and ready to go to talk some business news, sports wagering news as well. Jim, great to have you back here on NewsWire. How are you?
Good, Craig. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's dive in from the south to the north. I know you're dreaming of the south right now, but let's stick to Maryland. What's going on here? There's a new online casino bill happening. I know, look, so many people in that area have gravitated to sports betting. They're doing very well as far as all the revenue is concerned going in. But I know that there's some new legislation, and some of it is, I suppose, surrounding iGaming. That seems to be the hot topic this spring.
Yeah, several states are considering iGaming legislation right now as the different legislatures around the country get back in session here to start the year. And Maryland is one of them. And interestingly enough, in Maryland, I was speaking to some horse racing people not that long ago, and they told me that they're trying to get a piece of this iGaming bill as well, either through a license of their own or at least getting some revenues from iGaming directed back their way to help support the horse racing industry. And of course, Maryland is home to the second leg of the Triple Crown, the Preakness Stakes at Pimlico Racecourse. And kind of in addition to this iGaming bill, the state legislature in Maryland is also considering some changes to the racing industry, which would see Pimlico Racecourse get redeveloped here over the next couple of years. They would also close down Laurel Park, which also hosts thoroughbred racing, and kind of consolidate everything at Pimlico. So, like I said, I was speaking to some industry stakeholders, and they said that the sports betting side really for them is not where they want to focus their attention. They're looking more at this iGaming legislation to see if they could get a piece of revenues or get a license of their own. Now, in Maryland, the Stronach Group owns both of those race courses, Pimlico and Laurel. The deal that they struck with the racing industry recently would see the Stronach Group kind of exit the state somewhat. They would give day-to-day operations to the Maryland Thoroughbred Racetrack Authority, which is a little bit of a mouthful, but this entity would essentially control day-to-day racing, and the Stronach Group would continue then to effectively manage and license the Preakness Stakes and a couple of other event days in Maryland. But ultimately, what the racing executives told me is that they're hoping to get a piece of this iGaming legislation to kind of help them move throughout the years, I should say, as they sort of navigate this new arrangement with the Stronach Group and the state to see Laurel Park close here at some point after the next 4 years and redevelop Pimlico Racecourse, the home of the Preakness Stakes, and really kind of set off the horse racing industry on a bit of a new trajectory in Maryland. Again, hopefully for them with this iGaming bill that was just filed recently, and they're going to begin discussing that here in the next few weeks.
Okay, great start to our little segment and discussion here. The next part needs some explanation because, Jim, not everybody bets on horses like you. Not everybody travels across the country to go to facilities where horses race. People may not be familiar that when you bet on horse racing, you get a specific odds, and those odds can change based on the amount of people that are betting on the horse and the amount of money that's in the pool. And so essentially what New York is discussing is having fixed price odds on horse racing. And I want you to give me your best update as to if you think that's going to happen. And certainly I think people probably watching who are familiar, Jim, are asking why this is going to happen.
Yeah, so a couple of interesting pieces to this. And I think after having some conversations with folks in New York, that calling it fixed odds is not necessarily misleading, but not exactly a great representation of what it is Exactly. And Craig, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago once this bill in New York was filed to legalize, fixed odds wagering. And essentially what that means is that the sports books, the online sports books like the FanDuels and DraftKings of the world in New York would be able to offer horse racing markets. And because of the way the sports betting law is written in New York, those markets would need to be fixed odds markets like any of your other traditional sports bets are. So what this effectively would do would allow online sports books to offer horse racing markets, whether it be, win, play, show betting, Kentucky Derby future bets that we see in Las Vegas and other parts of the country, and other potential prop bets around horse racing. And I spoke to some representatives at the New York Racing Association, and they're all for this. They're trying to tap into the multi-billion-dollar market that is New York sports betting, and they feel like this would be a fantastic opportunity to kind of hop on board and ride that wave that New York sports betting has been on for the last 2 years. What this also would do would allow sports betting kiosks to be placed at professional sports stadiums and arenas and racetracks as well in New York. And NYRA, the New York Racing Association, did its own sort of financial analysis around this bill. And their determination, they told me that this would boost overall sports betting handle in New York State by $1 billion a year. And it would increase sportsbook revenue by 5%, which ultimately would mean about $25 million extra dollars in tax revenue for New York State. And New York State is running into a couple of fiscal issues over the next couple of years, which is why they're also considering iGaming legislation there, which projections put that at about $1 billion in tax revenue a year. So, with the fixed odds horse racing, I think it's more so New York racing itself trying to kind of capture some sports betting eyeballs, some sports betting dollars, and see how that works for the industry with this fixed odds bill. Speaking to some lawmakers and sponsors of the bill, they told me they're optimistic, and we'll kind of see where it goes. But there has been in recent years a fair bit of support for New York horse racing in the state legislature. So, we still got a couple of months to see how this all shakes out. I know that the conversations are just starting and will be ongoing over the next several weeks and months. So we'll keep tabs on it and see where things stand here as we get into the spring.
Okay. And Jim, let's end with an update in Indiana as Bet365, a company that is making their way from outside the U.S., more now inside the U.S. They are starting up in Indiana. So do you think that they'll be able to sustain?
Yeah, well, they've got a ton of money coming from their operations in the UK, and we've seen them kind of make inroads in a handful of markets here in the U.S. in recent months. Kentucky and Ohio come to mind, which, all sort of border Indiana, where they just launched yesterday. So Indiana marks their 8th state where Bet365 is live now in the U.S. Like I mentioned, Kentucky, Ohio, joining Louisiana, Virginia, New Jersey, Iowa, and Colorado. It'll be interesting for me to see just how much they go into this market in terms of marketing and promotional spending. We have seen that they have not been shy about spending money, especially in Ohio. I know in recent months that promotional spend boosted them to 3rd or 4th in overall market share of handle there with those promo dollars. Kentucky, a similar story. So all in that same sort of region, they are quite active, and I would expect more of the same coming in Indiana. Unfortunately, Indiana does not publish promotional spending. So we won't get exact eyes on it to see exactly how much they're spending and how that's working for them. But we can look at those handle figures when they start to come in here in the next couple of months with Bet365 now live in Indiana. And we could get a pretty decent idea of how active and promotion heavy they are as they try to make inroads into the Hoosier state.
Great stuff, Jim, today on the show. Appreciate you coming on. We'll check in next week before the Super Bowl as we get ready for the big game in Las Vegas. I'm sure you're getting ready to watch it as well. Thanks again for appearing on the program today. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Craig. See you next week.
All right, Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report with us. Coming up next, Ben Stevens previews 3 games in the NBA. Knicks, Heat, Mavericks, Timberwolves, Nuggets, and Thunder will go against the spread in those games, as well as Simon Applebaum in the studio. Just how many people were watching the AFC and NFC Championship, and how many people will be watching Live Golf coming up this weekend? We'll answer those questions for you coming up next right here on NewsWire, on SportsGrid, right after these messages. We'll be right back.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction, or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the rack. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even equate it to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Got a great slate of games in the NBA tonight. We'll preview 3 of them. The Miami Heat at home, not playing their best basketball, or maybe playing their worst basketball in years. They're going to host the Kings tonight. The Dallas Mavericks, what does Luka do for an encore tonight in Minnesota? And the Denver Nuggets taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's the focus of Ben Stevens from the early line. Here's a preview of those games.
Craig, on this Wednesday evening in the NBA, it's a double-digit slate. 10 games around the association. All 3 of the top teams in the Western Conference in action in marquee matchups that we will detail right here. We start with the number 1 team in the Western Conference, Anthony Edwards in the Minnesota Timberwolves. So far this season, for Minnesota, 33-14 record, a half-game advantage over the Denver Nuggets, a full game up now over the Oklahoma City Thunder. A huge win for the T-Wolves on the road in OKC earlier this week, outright as a 2.5-point underdog on the road in Oklahoma City. They return back home to the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, a 13.5-point spread in favor of Minnesota against the Dallas Mavericks. Why, Craig? Because we know this guy right here, Luka Doncic, has been ruled out for this Wednesday night affair due to a right ankle sprain. Not sure the significance of this injury or issue right now for Doncic, but he will miss this Wednesday evening matchup. That is why the number is 13.5 and working in favor of Minnesota. Booked as a favorite 35 times this year, 16, 17, and 2 against the number. The Dallas Mavericks, 9-12 ATS as an underdog. 5 games recently, Craig, as an underdog. In fact, 5 of their last 6, they've only covered once. Has Dallas in that 5-game span as a dog. So, again, Minnesota, half-game advantage over the reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets. Full game up over the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference standings. Those 2 teams face off tonight in OKC. Chet Holmgren and the Thunder, a slight, and I mean very slight favorite at this moment. The line working, Craig, more to a pick'em. If the Denver Nuggets do close as an underdog tonight, it would just be game number 6 as the underdog for Nikola Jokic and the Nugs throughout this season. 2 and 3 straight up in those previous 5 games, booked as a dog. But Craig, again, here we are talking about outright wins as we virtually have a pick'em tonight in OKC. It is a fascinating case study for that top spot in the Western Conference. Minnesota, 33-14. Denver has played 1 more game, 48 in total so far this year. The same amount of wins with 33, but 1 more loss than the Timberwolves at 15. 32-15 is that number for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Next game up, we go to South Beach. We go to Miami. A 1-point number in favor of Miami and Tyler Hero against De'Aaron Fox and the Sacramento Kings. Very close, though, Craig, as you can see on that money line as well. -112 for the Heat, -104 other side for Sacramento. The Kings, one of the best underdog teams in the NBA, 7-3 against the number, but we're not so worried about numbers here. 5-5 straight up this year. Meanwhile, for Miami, they have lost 7 straight games, trying to buck that trend tonight. A high total, though, at 230.5 for a Heat team that has gone under in 8 of its last 10 games. So 10 games on this Wednesday, Craig, around the association. Enjoy the action on the hardwood.
Thanks very much, Ben. Now let's check out Simon Applebaum. He's in our studio in New York today to go over the latest in sports ratings and business as well. Hey, Simon, great to catch up with you as we are approaching a very big week in golf, of course, on the PGA Tour and over in Live Golf. Found out about the news today with the PGA Tour getting some money, and we're also going to dive into this new deal with WWE and Netflix and a whole lot more. Great topics today, Simon. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, Craig. Great to be here. And we have some breaking news. Tomorrow, ESPN is going to start a multi-part report on sports betting using their Outside the Lines production crew led by Jeremy Schaap, who will host the segments. First segment will be tomorrow at the 7 a.m. Eastern Time Sports Center. It'll be repeated on an afternoon Sports Center. Then there'll be more reports late in the week and next week. And then there'll be an hour-long special on YouTube. 2 things I'll be looking for with this reports. 1, how much will they talk about ESPN Bet and how will they position that service along with FanDuel, DraftKings, and so forth? And secondly, will they talk about the possibility of sports betting through the television set? And I'm mentioning that because Monday on my Tomorrow televised program, we're going to have the chief executive of a service called The Take, which is using artificial intelligence software to work with smart TV set makers and smart TV devices to launch interactive apps, including sports betting. And that'll be on Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, Noon Pacific on my show.
Can't wait to check that out. All right, Simon, let's start off with a rewind. We had the AFC and NFC Championship on Sunday. Not streaming. You didn't have to stream this. You could actually watch this on television. 3 o'clock Eastern, 6:30 Eastern. What do the numbers look like after the weekend?
Both games, Craig, had between 56 and 57 million viewers. In the case of CBS's telecast, which went first, the Chiefs-Ravens game, it was the most watched AFC championship ever in CBS sports history. In the case of the Fox game, that was the second game, 49ers and Lions, it was the most watched since 2010. What was really amazing is how much could the viewership have gone further. For example, if the second half had not been a snooze in the Chiefs-Ravens game, and in the case of the NFC Championship, whether the Lions could have pulled out the victory, which they didn't do in the second half of that game because of all sorts of things. But both, I think CBS and Fox will be very, very happy with what they got. And it gives you a sense that with this matchup coming up 2 weeks from now, or a week and a half from now, really, Super Bowl Sunday, we could see the viewership record now at 110 million viewers fall because of the matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. It looks like it could be a whale of a game.
Yeah, I know that people used to bet on that. Not on the legal sports bets, but on the illegal sports. But how many people actually been watching the game? I don't think you could bet that over on FanDuel. Okay, so now we found out this morning the PGA Tour getting billions of dollars to add to their prize pools through private equity. But meanwhile, the show goes on for both the PGA Tour and Live Golf, and for the time being, Simon, separately. So this weekend, Jon Rahm takes his talents over to Live Golf. What do you think the reception will be? Because, as we know, it seems like an unlimited amount of money going to Live Golf, but not everybody is watching this.
Well, it's going to depend on how the fans react to what the CW is doing this year, because they've done a couple of interesting changes. Number one, the schedule is more compact. Yes, the first couple of tournaments this weekend and next weekend, Super Bowl weekend, are up against CBS golf coverage. And it's going to be interesting that the Las Vegas event, that's the second event of the Live Golf Tour, is up against the Phoenix Open from Waste Management with that crazy sort of inside the stadium 17th hole, which is one of the most amazing holes you ever see in golf. But the thing is, you're going to see 2 tournaments a month. Saturday and Sunday, the action will be on the CW. Friday, the first round will be on the CW app. I believe they're going to have the same announcing crew as they did last year, Arlo White, with Jerry Foltz and David Faraday. And one thing that the CW is going to do with the second tournament in Las Vegas is that they're going to have the Friday tournament go prime time. It's going to be from 8 to 10 o'clock. They'll have highlights of the first day's action. And then for both this weekend and next weekend, the Saturday show will start a half hour earlier than usually do. Usually it's 1 to 6 p.m. This time around it's going to be 12:30 to 5:30 p.m. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it happens. I think Rahm is going to be a big draw. Another thing we're going to be watching out for is, will they get the ad revenue? Now that they've had experience with the ACC action, football last fall, now you have men's basketball on Saturday, women's basketball on Sunday, whether or not you're going to see more sponsorship go to Live Golf, now that it seems that, for now, Live and PGA are going to go their separate ways. Also, something else to watch out for. The season's going to end in September. They're going to have the men's championship and the team championship on consecutive September weekends in the United States, as opposed to Saudi Arabia last year. That should help boost the viewership.
Okay, now speaking of viewership, a lot of people who are going to tune in to Monday Night Raw are going to move on over to Netflix to watch that, as the big announcement came last week. Another announcement now coming here is Pat McAfee, of course, of the wildly popular afternoon show, now on ESPN, Simon, is going to be a big part of Raw moving forward.
And this shocked a lot of people. And I'm sure that for the second weekend in a row, ESPN is shocked. Remember last week we had the Doc Rivers moving from being their prime commentator with Doris Burke and Mike Breen over to coaching the Milwaukee Bucks. Now we have Pat McAfee, who appeared at the Royal Rumble over last weekend. And then Monday night show starts, and I have to see it live on USA. And all of a sudden, Michael Cole, the announcer, says, "Oh, we have breaking news. Here's Pat McAfee." He comes out to tremendous ovation for the crowd. I thought it was pretty good. By the way, it's not the first time that McAfee has done a WWE telecast. In 2022 and 23, he was featured as a regular commentator on SmackDown, which, by the way, is going to be going to USA Network this fall. So it's going to be interesting to see how, over the next couple of weeks, McAfee not only is able to do his thing with WWE, but also balance out the rest of his schedule. Don't forget, he still has his daily Pat McAfee show, which is simulcast on social media and simulcast on ESPN. And I'd be curious to see whether, when football season rolls around, and he is still going to be doing game day, from what I understand, Saturday mornings, whether he's going to be able to make the Monday night telecast. Don't forget, Monday Night Raw is not in one place like NXT is in Orlando, Florida, where WWE is headquarters. It's going to be around the country. So one week he could be in New York, another week he could be in Orlando, another week he could be in Los Angeles or in Toronto, Canada. So it's going to be interesting to see how McAfee is getting his schedule together, and whether ESPN, publicly or privately, what do they think about McAfee making this full-time commitment to WWE?
Okay. And there's a new documentary, my understanding is, coming out tonight over on Tubi surrounding the WNBA. I don't know a ton about this, Simon, so let our viewers and listeners know about it.
It's called Shattered Glass. It is on Tubi, which is Fox's multi-channel bundle, where you can get up to 200,000 movies and TV episodes on demand, 200 channels, linear channels, and Tubi does a lot of originals. This is big for Tubi because it's their first sports documentary, whether it's a special, in this case, or series. This, by the way, deals with the WNBA Players Association. It features some of WNBA's top stars, including Breanna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops, one of their all-time legends, who, by the way, was behind the scenes as a producer. And this is being done by an all-female production team. So this is a very big thing for Tubi to try to see if they, like Netflix, is going to get very heavy going forward into doing sports documentaries, either specials or series. By the way, Tubi last year made $1 billion in ad sales, despite the fact that their profile was lowered because of how they went, how Fox treated them in the upfront, and the fact that they brought a new CEO in September. So this will be very interesting to see whether this is the start tonight of a whole new push to get Tubi back on track in terms of being a major, major deal in sports and in television.
Okay, let's end with the Professional Women's Hockey League. I know that some of the coverage is now going more national. MSG Network has been airing some of these games. How are things going, at least with the initial push?
The games themselves are good.
All right, looks like we are having a couple of technical difficulties here. Simon, looking good, but currently, as we would say, frozen on our screen. So thanks again, Simon, for coming on the show. Digital, internet, Tubi, all those things factor in even to our show as well. But here at Studio C in South Florida, we're still running. And speaking of which, coming up next, everybody is running toward this controversy in the NBA. Should you have to play 65 games of 20 minutes or more in the NBA to qualify to win the NBA's MVP? We have a lot of dissenting opinions on it. On the dissenting side, we've got an all-star. Of the opinion that this is a good thing, about an hour ago, one of the best players in the NBA went to social media and said he loves the idea. So we'll talk about that coming up next year on NewsWire on SportsGrid. Stay with us. More NewsWire coming up right after these quick messages. And by the way, the early line coming up at the top of the hour. We'll be right back.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
favorite. I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
I can tell you, like, Las Vegas is heavy San Francisco territory. All right, there are a ton of Niner fans, man, in Las Vegas and in Nevada, and specifically Reno. Reno's close, obviously, right? So, like, Reno's numbers will be a little bit different, but the total of 47.5. I get it.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
I kind of thought that Mike would maybe go in a different direction or at least listen to some people with some different ideas.
If you were going to retain Mike Tomlin as coach, and I believe with both feet that you shouldn't let him really anywhere near this hire. That he had proved over the years that this was not an area of comfort or expertise for him.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Purdue on the road in a very difficult place to win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Not in Jersey Mike's Arena, but in the RAC. And it was tight.
You still have to win these games. Like, you can talk about even the equated to the NBA. Like OKC just rolling into Detroit going, yeah, this is going to be an easy victory, and not coming away with the W because you're not focused here. Good move there for the Purdue Boilermakers. You can take a look at Zach Edey.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
NewsWire here on SportsGrid. One quick update in baseball. Former Yankees pitcher Wandy Peralta signs a 4-year deal with the Padres, according to The Athletic. Maybe the hot stove continuing to percolate as the week goes on. We'll see. So a lot of controversy surrounding this new rule in the National Basketball Association handed down by the commissioner, Adam Silver, that in order to win the NBA's MVP, you have to play 65 games and 20 minutes apiece in those 65 games. And certainly Joel Embiid, who would be the favorite to win the MVP, is going to come real close to meeting that threshold. And it's really drawn a lot of discussion in the NBA community. In fact, Tyrese Halliburton, one of the best players right now going in the NBA All-Star and is going to have the All-Star game in Indiana, says that the 65-game threshold is a stupid rule, and essentially saying that you shouldn't have to do this. And, there's a lot of other players that are saying, well, what about 62 or 61? Why is it 65? Why does it have to be 20 minutes a game? And then as we were on the show today, I know we didn't have time to get a graphic together for this, but Magic Johnson, of course, has won the MVP in the NBA, went on this, not a tirade because Magic doesn't do tirades on social media, but basically saying this is the best thing that's happened to the NBA. And he loves the idea that you have to play 65 games, and more so the fact that it's for the fans. It's to ensure that the fans, especially on the road, who pay to go see the games, that they get to see the best players play and they're just not sitting. So I don't think this is the last that we have heard of this, but needless to say, everybody has an opinion on the subject, and I do wonder if it does come down to the end and Joel Embiid is the NBA's MVP, what happens that last week of the season if the Sixers don't need to play their stars, but Embiid needs to win the MVP? Remains to be seen. We'll find out. Thanks again to Simon Applebaum for coming on the show. Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report. Jacob Camenker from Sporting News. As always, thanks to our producer today, Mike Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be right back here for our Thursday edition of NewsWire. That's coming up tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on SportsGrid. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a good one.